5.
Curry hits a three.
4.
Houston with a drive. Deep left field.
3.
Patrick hit by Watt. Sack number 10.
2.
Messi with a record-breaking goal.
1.
Welcome to BSS Sports. Now, here are your hosts, Steve and Trevor.
Good afternoon and welcome to another fun edition of BSS Sports. It's Steve Schill and Trevor Struthers with you on this Monday afternoon. And the Raptors beat the Bucks. Woo, they almost lost. 34-7 run in like the last minute of Game 6, I believe. What a show that was. Taking on the Cavaliers tonight, 7 p.m. in Ohio. Now, the Cavaliers in general have not really changed a whole lot in like the downgrading department. However, they have added Mr. Kyle Korver. And, we're talking about momentum. And that last game between the Raptors and the Bucks, again, the 34-7 run. But, if you want somebody to kill the momentum, Kyle Korver, just tossing up a couple of threes. It's going to happen. I feel the Raptors are one of the more susceptible teams to the momentum kills. Trevor, do you think the Raptors have a chance of getting out of the second round this year?
Oh my, not if they played like what they did against the Bucks. And a lot of credit to the Bucks. If they're fully healthy, they probably end up beating the Raptors, and they're going to be a dangerous team moving forward, no doubt about that. But the Raptors just ended up ultimately being the better team in this series. You could argue, who was the best player? Was it the Greek Freak, or was it maybe a DeMar DeRozan? It probably wasn't a Kyle Lowry. Really seemed to struggle at times shooting. DeRozan and Lowry at times went quiet. They had that really ugly game in Milwaukee where they were really quiet. And DeRozan went 0 for 8 from the field. That's ridiculous. And they obviously can't play like what they did against Milwaukee, or they're going to get killed. If I were to give a prediction on this series, I'd probably say Cleveland in 5 with the way things played out. Cleveland's well rested now after sweeping the Pacers, so they've had a nice little rest, not even a nap. It's like been a full-on sleep, and now they have the Raptors coming into their town, and Cavaliers are going to do their thing. And I just feel like the Raptors can't hang with the Cavaliers unless they really change their game. Last year in the conference final, they looked like a team that could maybe hang with the Cavs. This year, though, and they're a better team this year. That's the surprising thing with the additions that they've made, and Ibaka's a huge part of that, obviously. But, with those additions that they've made, they should be a better team, and so they should be able to give the Cavs a push for their money. But I'm just not seeing it yet in these playoffs, and so they really have to come out firing here in round number 2.
Well, all the talk was when they got P.J. Tucker was the fact that he was a defensive player, and they solely got him to guard LeBron. I don't know how much weight you want to put into that, but, they're arguably prepared for Cleveland. Now, across the league, Celtics now take on the Washington Wizards, Spurs are taking on the Rockets, and the Warriors are taking on the Jazz. Now, I know the Jazz are in the Western Conference, and generally speaking, not a whole lot of people pay attention to who they are. But last year, I was watching them towards the end of the season, and they were kind of like, the young and upping kid, like kind of like the Leafs, I guess, if you want to put it in that perspective. And they were just really fun to watch. And it's wild to see that they're already in the second round. They're taking on the Warriors. I don't know if I have that much faith and them taking on the Warriors, but I feel like it'll be an interesting series. It's almost kind of like the Raptors and the Cavaliers, but like a Raptors team without Serge Ibaka, per se, if you will. We'll find out how those series plays out. And then final NBA news, Paul Pierce retired. The other Boston Celtic from their Big Three, original Big Three, if you want to call them that, has retired. Trevor, do you think that Paul Pierce waited too long to retire, or do you think that, he's kind of just gone into, the moonlight and whatnot? Because when Kevin Garnett finished off with the Timberwolves, he was still playing an integral part. I just didn't really feel that Paul Pierce was, having that much of an impact in his final years.
Yeah, maybe, but it wasn't that long ago that he did have an impact, and that's the thing. Sometimes it can really drop down. It depends on what team you're on, and Pierce has done some bouncing around, right? And so your role is going to change depending on what team you're going to. And ultimately, I think that played a big factor in how things played out for him when it comes to having an integral part in the team. But, and so Paul Pierce, he was the guy that it was only a couple of years ago was making buckets, calling bank, and beating the Raptors in the playoffs, right? So he was the guy that could definitely just a couple of years ago make a big impact in a playoff series. And so, I mean, the fact that he stuck around for this long is not surprising. And the fact now that he's leaving after watching what has happened in his time since, it's not surprising either. I think personally it's about the right time for him to go.
Yep, I agree. I think Paul Pierce is definitely coming to the end, and it's better to retire while he's still kind of, a big name before kind of just fading off into the distance. And it's weird to think, Kobe Bryant didn't retire too long ago either, but nobody ever hears his name being thrown around unless we're talking about shoes. Now, the NFL draft analysts, I honestly think that they are probably the best analysts in the game, mainly because I have no idea about who these NFL draft prospects are for the most part, but they make it just the way they word it and inform you about all these people at such a quick pace. It's incredible. I don't know how they do it, but some of the highlights from the NFL draft. The Atlanta Falcons, they picked a guy called Takarist McKinley in their first round, and he proceeded to drop the F-bomb on stage. And everybody was like, oh, what in the heck? And if you're right about it, then you know that his grandmother was his life. She passed away, but he did get drafted in the NFL, so it was one of those, bittersweet moments, except, the emotion got the better of him. And NFL person coming out and telling the media, hey, he's not going to get fined. Good on you, NFL. This is a first. They're not finding someone. Cough, cough. So, other familiar names that went in the first round. T.J. Watt, brother of J.J. Watt, joining the Steel City. And Jabril Peppers, son of Julius Peppers, joining the only bad team in Cleveland, the Browns. So, the more legitimate big news from the NFL draft was the Bears moved up one spot to take the second pick from the 49ers for a lot. Chicago gave up their third overall choice, a third-round pick, a fourth-round pick, and next year's third-round pick to move up one spot to take a quarterback called Mitch Trubisky. Now, the thing with Trubisky is he hasn't won a lot. He was not on many scouting radar, per se. Wasn't the number one quarterback. Wasn't supposed to go that high. And or at least the 49ers GM thought that they were going to take the defensive end Solomon, which they ended up getting because the 49ers initially wanted him. So the 49ers got the pick they wanted, plus a whole whack of other draft picks, and Chicago got a quarterback who is now kind of the laughingstock of the NFL, not because he's a bad player or anything, but just for the fact that Chicago gave up so much to get him after they decided they don't want Jay Cutler anymore. But then they also hired Mike Glennon, former Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback, like a $45 million 3-year deal. So you're probably going to think, okay, Trubisky's going to shadow Glennon, but that's a lot of money to put into a quarterback. But the Bears, they didn't play this right. Trev, what's your thoughts on the whole Trubisky thing?
They really didn't. First off, it wasn't a great year for quarterbacks. So the fact that one ended up going number 2, and I mean, like you said, a lot of people thought he wasn't the best quarterback in the draft. That says a lot. Obviously, it's the guy they wanted. They could have had him at number 3. That's the other thing. I mean, if they're moving up 10 spots, then I guess sure. They're moving up 1 spot, and he's going to be there. That's the surprising thing about this whole thing as well. And I mean, you mentioned it as well. I mean, they already have a quarterback they're paying money to. It just doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of. I mean, maybe somewhere down the road, who knows? Things can work out, but right now it doesn't make any sense, and it's a head scratching maneuver. I mean, we thought Cleveland maybe could have screwed something up, and a lot of credit to Cleveland. They actually had a pretty good draft, judging by all the experts, what they're saying, stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, it was really the Chicago Bears to make the first Browns move.
The NFL draft is always a show and a half. I mean, the Roger Goodell boos, just everything is great. If you want prime sports television,
it was in Philadelphia. It was in Philadelphia. It was outside. It was very, very awesome. I mean, I've never seen a draft happen really outside before. So, I mean, it was a cool spectacle. You had a lot of people there, obviously, and I mean, you can't do that in many places. But I mean, with the NFL draft and just the love of football down there in the United States, that you can pull that off there, and they definitely did. And there's a lot of passionate fans in Philly.
So, switching over to the NHL. Trev's a happy man because Ottawa is leading the series 2-0 over the Rangers. But honestly, so far it looks like that the Pittsburgh Penguins might become Stanley Cup champions again. They're 2-0 over Washington right now. Braden Holtby, the God, one of the newer big goalies, at least everybody's talking about him, is not being able to stop the Penguins, who arguably have one of the best offenses in the game. And Washington, I mean, their offense is Alex Ovechkin, and we all kind of know that. But in that series, do you think that Washington is going to be able to turn that around, or is it just going to be Pittsburgh all the way?
Man, it's hard to see them turning around now. I mean, now they go into Pittsburgh. Washington's down 2-0. They have a solid team, a great team. Shattenkirk has really added a lot to their blue line. You mentioned Ovechkin, obviously, up front. Backstrom. They have a 1-2 punch up there. They have Holtby and Ned, who is no doubt one of the best goaltenders in the league. They just can't seem to get it done for some reason. I mean, here comes Pittsburgh. They have Matt Murray go down in round one of the first game in the warm-up. In steps Marc-Andre Fleury, and he's kind of been the story so far in the playoffs for the Penguins. He has been phenomenal. He did a large part in them winning game 2 of this series. And yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh at this point, no doubt, are Stanley Cup favorites. And it wasn't that long ago. It was 2008, 2009. They went to back-to-back Stanley Cup finals, lost that first time to Detroit, then came back and beat Detroit the next year. So, I mean, to see them in back-to-back Stanley Cup finals, it wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world. But, I mean, hey, look around the league. Chicago's gone. Pittsburgh here has a chance to get rid of Washington. Teams that could be left, you have the Rangers, you have Ottawa, St. Louis, Nashville, you have Edmonton, and Anaheim. So, no doubt that the favorite at this point has to be Pittsburgh, and they are firing on all cylinders. And I mean, a guy like Gensel, I mean, the ability he has to put the puck in the net, and who thought that would have been a thing? But because he's playing with Sidney Crosby, he's getting those opportunities. Crosby is doing Crosby things to set him up, and he's finishing the job, and he's having himself a real nice playoff.
Whoever decided to keep Marc-Andre Fleury is going to have a job if the Penguins win for the rest of his life.
Well, the big thing here, though, with the Penguins and Marc-Andre Fleury and Matt Murray is we have an expansion draft coming up not too soon after these playoffs are over, and you can only protect one of those guys if you're Pittsburgh, right? So the big question becomes, and I mean, I guess it would be Murray, right? The younger guy. It's probably the safer bet as to who to protect and who to keep. But I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury's playing phenomenally, and Pittsburgh is a team that's in a win-now mode. I mean, guys like Malkin and Crosby, I mean, they won the Cup last year, and they could win it again this year. But guys like Crosby and Malkin aren't getting younger. Letang as well when he gets back. So, I mean, they're a team that's in win-now mode, and maybe they would prefer Fleury. And, I mean, either way, it seems like the Golden Knights could end up getting a pretty good goaltender at this point.
That's such a stupid name. Anyway, so talking about the Ottawa series, they're up 2-0 over the Rangers, and I mean, the series for hockey purposes is really good. Like, I mean, we're talking about overtime, we're talking about great hockey. I mean, the Ottawa attendance story, I mean, it's getting blown out of proportion. I don't think that it's really that big of a deal. I mean, everybody, like, half the time when people are like, hey, do you want to go for food? Most people say no, so how about going to an NHL playoff hockey game? I don't even want to know about the prices. But anyway, what's your take on the series so far? You thinking Ottawa is just going to sweep it?
Well, quickly on the attendance, I mean, for all I care, that game 1, it was really loud. And there was one point late in the third period, they didn't play any music during a TV timeout. It was just a spontaneous Go Sens Go chant that was occurring. So, I mean, it may not have been full, but it was definitely a loud and crazy building. And as for the series, I don't think the Senators will sweep. Obviously, having a 2-0 series lead is very comfortable for the Senators at this point, but that goes away if they lose game 3 tomorrow. So really they got to keep on top of what they're doing. And I mean, how they pulled off game 2, I don't know if I could ever tell you. Game 1, it's easy to tell you how they pulled that off. I mean, apart from trying to explain the Karlsson goal from below the goal line, but Craig Anderson stood on his head. In Game 2, that wasn't necessarily the case. I didn't think Craig Anderson was bad. I mean, there was a lot of traffic in front of his net, made it difficult for him to see pucks. Ultimately, he ended up allowing a lot of goals, and the Sens were down by 2 goals about 3 different times, and, at about 5-3, you're thinking there's no way in heck we're going to be able to put 5 past Henrik Lundqvist in these next 5 minutes put 2 more behind Lundqvist in these next 5 minutes to get to 5 goals in the game. and then maybe score a sixth one on him in overtime. He's too good, yet they find a way to do it, and a lot of that obviously has to do with J.G. Pageau scoring 4 goals in a playoff game for the first time in 7 years when Johan Franzen did it with the friggin' Red Wings. Like, that's incredible to think about, and I mean, it's not like it's Erik Karlsson, it's not like it's Bobby Ryan, it's not like it's Kyle Turris that's putting up 4 goals. It's J.G. Pageau, and what he is he is a checking centerman that wins faceoffs. He is not a guy that finds the back of the net. He had a playoff hat trick a few years ago against Montreal. He had 4 goals in this game. In his other 23 playoff games, he has 2 goals. I mean, that's the kind of thing. But you get stories like this when you're on a playoff run and when you're making a run and winning games and getting further. You have guys that step up like this. I talked about Gensel with the Penguins. Right now, it's J.G. Pageau with the Senators scoring 4 goals and winning that game for them.
If you could tell, Trevor is super passionate about the Ottawa Senators. Final news, Nashville is leading over the Blue Jackets 2-1, and Edmonton leads 2-1 over Anaheim. And if you want to see a physical game, check out Edmonton and Anaheim. That's it for this edition of BSS Sports. Make sure to like us on Facebook and at Twitter at BSS Sports. Archiving all of our works on YouTube at BSS Productions. For Trevor, Struthers, and myself, Stephen Schill, we'll catch you